Manchester City is not doing well this season. 4 consecutive defeats in the Premier League, 6 across all competitions, and no wins in 7 matches. This is a streak no one wants to see. A team that struck fear into other teams for ages under a manager who has terrorized the top leagues for over a decade suddenly seems to have lost its edge this season. So, what happened? Let's get one thing straight. Manchester City is not your average football club. They're the team that turned oil money into trophies, the club that made Pep Guardiola a household name, and the squad that made quadruple a thing people actually believed in. But this season? Oh, this season has been different. This season, Manchester City has been human. And by human, I mean flawed, frustrating, and occasionally downright hilarious. So, how did the mighty citizens go from invincible to invisible? Let's dive in. Rewind to August 2023. The sun was shining, the transfer window was buzzing, and Manchester City fans were sipping their overpriced lattes while dreaming of another historic season. After winning the Premier League, FA Cup, and Champions League in the 2022-23 season, City was the undisputed king of European football. Pep Guardiola was being hailed as a genius. Erling Haaland was breaking goal-scoring records for fun, and the squad depth was so ridiculous that even their bench could probably win the championship. The pundits were predicting another dominant season. Some even dared to whisper the dreaded Q word, quadruple. But here's the thing about hype. It's like a balloon. It looks great when it's full, but one tiny prick, and poof, it's gone. And boy, did City's balloon get pricked this season. One of the biggest issues was the lack of cohesion in the squad. Pep's tinkering, which usually works like a charm, seemed to backfire. Players were being shuffled in and out of positions like a game of musical chairs, and no one seemed to know where they were supposed to be. Phil Foden was being used as a false 9, a winger, and a central midfielder, sometimes all in the same game. And don't even get me started on Calvin Phillips, who spent more time on the bench than a park pigeon. If there's one thing that can derail a season faster than a Jose Mourinho press conference, it's injuries. And City had them in spades. Kevin De Bruyne, the midfield maestro, suffered a hamstring injury. John Stones, the defensive rock, was in and out of the lineup with various knocks. Oscar Bob was looking shiny and bright towards the end of last season and the start of this one, only for him to get a massive injury, a broken leg, causing him to miss the entirety of this season thus far. The lack of depth in certain positions became glaringly obvious. Without De Bruyne pulling the strings in midfield, City looked lost. The defense, usually so solid, was leaking goals like a sieve, and the attack, while still potent, lacked the fluidity and creativity that had made them so unstoppable in previous seasons. Speaking of Haaland, let's talk about the big Norwegian. Last season, he was a revelation, a goal-scoring machine who broke records and terrified defenders. This season, he's still scoring goals because, let's face it, he's Erling Haaland. But something feels off. Teams have figured out how to neutralize him, cutting off the supply line and forcing City to find other ways to score. The problem is, City hasn't always been able to adapt. Too often, they've relied on Haaland to bail them out, and when he's not firing on all cylinders, the whole team suffers. It's like having a Ferrari but only driving it in first gear. Sure, it's still a Ferrari, but you're not exactly getting the most out of it. The next segment is where things get a little bit more disappointing. In all fairness, Manchester City was in a tight spot after Rodri's injury, but they managed to pass through all the matches they were expected to win. Sure, some can say that injuries are the main problem the coach has to deal with, but this isn't any old coach. Pep Guardiola is widely regarded as one of the greatest managers in football history, but even geniuses have their off days, and this season, Pep's decisions have been questionable. As the season progressed, it became clear that City was no longer the dominant force they once were. Liverpool, Arsenal, and even surprise packages like Nottingham and Tottenham were giving them a run for their money. By Christmas, City found themselves in 4th place, a position they hadn't been in since the dark days of Manuel Pellegrini. The title race, which City had made look like a one-horse affair in recent years, was suddenly wide open. And while City still had the quality to compete, they lacked the consistency and ruthlessness that had defined their previous campaigns. And what's more disappointing is the weak mentality the team showed following a few missteps, which also points out Guardiola's lack of strong leadership this season. He has been unable thus far to get City up to task mentally, and his own frustrations have shown. Just take a look at this clip where he intentionally scratched himself so violently out of frustration. When your whole squad needs picking up and your coach is doing things like that, it's not very motivating. On top of that, the defense is suffering to the point where Guardiola has seemingly all but given up on having a defensive-minded midfielder. Against Liverpool and Feyenoord, he had central midfielders who preferred being further up the pitch. Gundogan and Bernardo, who are naturally great attackers, looked very vulnerable defensively. In simpler words, Guardiola shuffled the team in a very unnatural manner this season, and it clearly showed the consequences. City fans, spoiled by years of success, have been struggling to come to terms with this season's decline. Social media has been a hotbed of frustration, with memes, rants, and hot takes flooding timelines. Some fans have called for Pep's head. Others have blamed the board for not strengthening the squad in the summer. And then, there are those who have simply thrown their hands up in despair, wondering if this is the beginning of the end for City's dominance. This season might be a blip, but it's far from the end of the road. So, the big question now is, what's next for Manchester City? Can they recover from this season's disappointments and return to their dominant best? What to do in this situation? The answer, as always, lies in the details. Pep Guardiola will need to address the squad's weaknesses, whether through the transfer market or by getting more out of the players he already has. As of now, City is still in a questionable state. The team will need to find its rhythm and rediscover the hunger that drove them to so much success in recent years. And then there's the mental aspect. Football is as much about confidence and belief as it is about tactics and talent. City's players will need to shake off the doubts and frustrations of this season and come back stronger. If they can do that, there's no reason they can't reclaim their place at the top of English and European football. So, is this the end of Manchester City's dominance? Probably not, but it is a reminder that even the best teams can't take success for granted. Football is a cruel and unpredictable sport, and this season has been a humbling experience for City and their fans. But here's the thing about decline. It's not permanent. Every great team goes through ups and downs, and City's current struggles are just part of the cycle. The key is how they respond. If they can learn from their mistakes, regroup, and come back stronger, this season might just be a footnote in their history. And if not, well, at least we'll always have the memes. Do you think Manchester City will redeem themselves this season? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. If you're new to this channel, click on that bell icon to be notified about our latest videos. As always, stay tuned with Footy, and see you at the next one.